give a warm welcome to Adrián, our last speaker. Thank you, Adrián, for holding here until the last talk. He's an experienced team leader, front-end developer, and web accessibility advocate. He's from Madrid, but since 2012, he's living and working in Vienna, Austria. By the way, a beautiful city for me. When he's not at the office, he enjoys having a good read, working his way through any delicious recipe, and indulging his love for traveling to new places. Adrián, welcome to this event, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for the awesome conference. But let's start with the talk. I'm talking today about testing web accessibility. A bit more about myself. As you just said, I'm from Madrid. I'm from Spain. I'm a team lead and a front-end developer and a huge accessibility advocate. And you can find me almost everywhere under my surname. So let's talk about accessibility. And one of the most common questions that I always have is, what is this A11Y that we always see in the place of accessibility? And this is because there is 11 letters between the A and the Y of the word accessibility. So that's the international acronym that we are going to use for accessibility. So why is so obvious in the real world that those 4 situations are completely wrong? The first 2 images, there is a very steep ramp, so poor anyone with a wheelchair that tries to use it. In the third one, there is a stairs at the end of the ramp, and in the fourth one is a totally unusable ramp. So this is completely wrong. I mean, maybe different situations. So someone comes with a wheelchair and press the accessibility button, all good. The door opens automatically, but surprise, there is stairs at the end. So why is this so obvious in the real world for us? But when we go to the online world, it's not so obvious that a website is inaccessible. So if we describe accessibility again in the real world as everyone with disabilities can use any infrastructure, then web accessibility is the same. That websites, tools, and technologies are designed to people with disabilities can use it. So let me put you an example. If you are in a online shop, in an e-commerce, and then you call the support team because you want to know where your latest purchases are. So they can tell you something like, oh, you need to click on the button in the top right corner. Or maybe you want to change your email address. So they can tell you something like, oh, you need to click on the button with the engine icon. But for blind people, there's no top right corner. There's no engine that looks like an icon. So we need to take care, and we need to take this in consideration when we develop a website. Let me give you a couple of numbers. 2 years ago, around, we've been in the world 7.6 billion people, and more than 1 billion people live with some form of vision impairment. So when we develop our online shop, our e-commerce, our businesses, those people are our audience as well. So we want to reach as much people as we can. I'm not going to talk about developing web accessibility today. I have a different talk, and you can watch it. You can look for it in YouTube. But I'm going to talk about how to make sure that your website, your web application is accessible. So let's talk about testing. Automate tests are really cool. They can free up your QA team, your testing team, for manual test every single part of the application, but it's not magic. They cannot automatically make your site accessible. Don't forget, we only can tackle 20 to 50% of the accessibility issues automatically. So we need to include this automate test as a step of a larger process, which includes manual tests as well. So I've created a simple application in React with 3 tiny components. The first one is a button. The second one is a fake button, which is an anchor link with the role button, which you should never use. And the third one is an image, a normal image. And in the entry point of the application, I put a bunch of errors. So let's see if I can find them. So when I test the application that I'm working on, normally I take 3 steps. So either I can test during the development process, so while I code. Maybe you inherit a code base, or you wrongly think that you're done. So you can test the whole application at once. And the third one as well, you should test it manually. So let's go through all these 3 parts. So testing during the development process, so testing the code. The Equilabs, so I'm going to start from the first one. The Equilabs created the Axe family. The Axe family is a family of tools, and one of these ones is a React library. So you can install it as a developer dependency of your application, and you should call the exported function only if you are in an environment different than production, so any development environment or your local. What is this library doing? So whenever you run your application in the browser, you are going to see in the developer tools in the console, you're going to see the accessibility issues that your web application is having. You can see the severity level from minor to critical. If you have several times the same issue, you will see them grouped. And you will see what is the error, where is the error in your HTML, so which element is causing this violation, and as well a direct link to Dequi University, which is the documentation that Dequi has created to show you how to fix those errors and learn more about it. So you can click directly and fix the problem. Another valuable tool is Yest lint plugin. So if you're using a linter, or if you don't know what a linter is, a linter basically is a configuration file where you say, tell me that I'm wrong when I'm doing this. So you are defining some rules, and whenever you break the rules, then the linter is going to inform you about it. So you will see this wavy underline over the code. So if you hover, you will see the rules that you broke. So in this case, I'm using the plugin for accessibility. So in line number 2, I'm adding this plugin to my lint config file. And in line number 12, I'm extending the recommended rules. With this line, I would be safe. I prefer to specify my own rules, but I will repeat, with line number 12 and line number 2, you will be safe with all the recommended rules. And again, as I said, if you hover in the code editor, the wavy underlined code, you will see what violation you have. And as well, you will see those violations when you run your application in the terminal with npm run or yarn run, depending on the package that you're using. You will see them as well listed. And next one is probably my favorite, which is Yest Axe. So again, we're back to the Axe family from Dequi, and Yest is a testing library for JavaScript, normally used to write unit tests. I believe you can write end-to-end tests, but mainly we use it for unit tests. So again, you need to install it as a developer dependency in your application, and you can write your own unit tests. In this case, I'm importing my whole application. I am using the React DOM server to render the whole application as a string, and I'm throwing it through the Axe engine. And of course, I expect to have no violations. So when I'm npm run test, or again, yarn run tests in the terminal, the test will be run, and it will display the issues that I have in this HTML. Again, as the React Axe is going to give you what is the error, where is in the HTML, and as well the direct link to DQuI University. So again, the official documentation from DQuI, the Axe family, on how to solve these violations. So those three tools are the one that I use to test while I develop. But maybe you're new in a company and then you inherit a full code base and they've never touched anything related with accessibility, or you think you are done with your application and then you want to make a higher level test. So you can test the whole DOM structure. Back to Axe family. Axe has a CLI, so you can use it in the terminal. In this case, you need to install it globally in your machine, obviously with the -G, and you use Axe and the URL that you want to test. It will run a Chrome headless instance. It will run the test, and again, we see pretty much the same as any tool from Axe. What is the violation? Where is in the HTML the violation, and a direct link to the official documentation from DQuI. A very similar application is P11Y. Again, you need to install it globally in your machine, and same behavior. You put P11Y and follow by the URL that you want to test, and it's going to run another headless browser instance. And it's going to give you the information about the test. In this case, you don't have a direct link to any documentation because P11Y doesn't have it. So it's your homework to go to Google and find out how to solve those problems. But in this case, I think P11Y is giving you a bit more information. So it's giving you the principles and the guidelines that they fail. So in the WCAG, AA or AAA, as well as giving you the full map of the HTML elements and the exact element where the issue is happening. And you can run this over your local host as well, so you don't need a developer environment or anywhere to upload your code. As well, this tool has a CI, which maybe you can say, oh, I need a lot of URLs to test. I don't want to go one by one. So what you can do is create a JSON file, a config file, with an array of URLs. And the first one, I'm using the Stack Overflow, just a plain URL. And the second one, I'm giving a timeout, and I'm taking a screen capture. And the third one, which is probably the interesting one here, is I can perform actions. So I can wait for an element with a class or an ID to be loaded. I can click in actions. I can navigate through the website, and I can take screen capture. So maybe I can use them either for visually regression tests, or I can use it for reporting purposes. And so you just need to execute P11Y CI in the root of your project where your JSON file is. It's going to find it. It's going to run the 3 tests. And it's going to give you pretty much the same results as the previous video. So again, what is the error and where is it? And you can see in the root of your project the screen captures that are taken. Lighthouse. Lighthouse is a tool developed by Google, and is included in every Chrome browser under the developer tools. But you can use them as well over the terminal. So you have to install it globally in your machine. And pretty much the same behavior. You use Lighthouse followed by the URL. And I'm using the -- view to execute the view of the report that Lighthouse is generated. So if I execute the Lighthouse, in this case, instead of a headless browser, it's gonna execute a full Chrome instance where you can see all tests that they are going to be performed. Low internet, performance test, speed test, accessibility, responsive design, everything. And it's going to give you an HTML report. So you can click around and you can see where are the issues, what are the issues, and how to solve them. They will give you some information about how to solve them. As well, you can have some links to the official documentation by Google on accessibility and how to solve those issues. So those are the 3 tools that I used for testing the whole DOM. The main features, again, in my opinion, that doesn't mean that this is the main feature of every tool, but I think I've already mentioned it. So in the AXCLI, you have a direct link to the DECO University documentation. PA11Y, I think the main feature is that you can execute actions over the URLs. And Lighthouse, you can dump these results to an HTML report or a JSON file. So you can include these into your pipeline for building your build pipeline, so you can break the deployment to avoid releasing code with accessibility issues. But as I said at the beginning, only 20 to 50% of the issues can be found by automate test. So we need to tackle this in the manual test phase. So what I normally use are either Chrome extensions, or during my development, I use a screen reader to directly test with my headphones, and I see how does the website sound like. But I'm going to show you the extensions that I use for, in my case, Chrome. So those are the ones that I use more. There are more that I need to include in further versions of this one. I can maybe mention it at the end. But let me show you one by one. Again, back to the Axe family from DECO, they have an extension. You can find it under the development tools of the browser, and you can click in Analyze the whole website. So it's going to create an analysis. The same as in the terminal, is going to give you what is the error and where exactly in your HTML is the error. It's going to give you a link where you see Learn More from DECO University, but as well it's going to display the issue, so the information from for the documentation right there. Very similar one is ARC Toolkit. So again, you can find it under the development tools, and these you can click in Run Tests. You can see different sections, and I'm going to focus on images, for example, and I can see the warnings or the serious errors. If I click, I go directly to my code, and as well, if I scroll a bit down in the window, they will highlight, in this case, the images that doesn't have any alt property. Accessibility Insights has a very nice feature. So the top order of your website needs to be very consistent with the content of your website, because visually impaired people normally either they navigate through a special keyboard or using the tab key in your keyboard. So they don't use a mouse. That's why the tab order is so important. So with this tool, you can create a tab map where you can use for reporting or for testing that the content and the content is consistent. So the tab order is consistent with the contents are. So you can see the map while you tab in. You need to manually tap, and then it will show and display a map. So you can see if the jumps are correct or you have some inconsistencies. Wave, they released a new extension some months ago, I think like 4 or 5 months ago. And for me, is the most complete one, because once you click, it executes automatically and very fast a huge whole test. So you can see the missing alt text in the images, or maybe you can see the structure for SEO in this case, so H1, H2, the structure of the headings, or you can see the AA and AAA contrast ratios of the colors of the buttons and the text. You can deactivate completely the CSS of your website, so you can see if the HTML is correctly structured. And as well, you can dive into the code if you want to see it. So I think it's a quite complete one. But not only passing tests are beneficial for us. Sometimes we need to put ourselves in the shoes and the skin of visually impaired people. So in this case, No Coffee is a simulator on how those people will see, the ones that can, your website. So maybe you forgot your glasses at home. So maybe you will see the website like this. Or maybe you have problems with glare. So you will see less, right? Or you're colorblind, right? So you have protanopia, so the colors are distorted, or maybe directly no color. So you can simulate different visually impairments, glaucoma or side vision, or maybe floaters. It's more common, like people having floaters, and you can specify the size of the floater, so you can see if the content, the colors are, or the size of the text are enough for someone with those impairments. So those are the tools that I show you today, a bit on how they work. I think for me, the important thing for you is to know that they exist, that they are open source, they are free, and that you can play around with them, because they are really important and testing that your website is accessible. The application that I create, the very small application, is under my GitHub, so you can find it there. The slides of this and any talk that I gave are under speakerdeck.com/Bolonio. The ones that doesn't like either video or slides, I wrote a series of 3 articles in my website about this exact talk, so you can read about them and play around with the code. I would love to encourage you to visit the new Introduction to Web Accessibility course in edX. It is officially created by the W3C, which is the community that creates the standards for HTML, CSS, and accessibility. And I want to leave with a couple of sentences that I find very important. The first one said, it's not just about disabled users being able to access a website. It's about everyone being able to access your website, because you never know when you are going to be situational disabled. Again, maybe you forgot your glasses today at home, or you don't have your mouse with you, or you drop your computer and your screen is completely black, or you have kids and then you have one of your kids in your hand, and you need to use the computer with only one hand using the tab key to navigate through it. So we need to think about everyone, the whole audience, being able to access your website, and not only the disabled people. Because accessibility is not a feature. Disabilities are not an option. No one chose that. So accessibility should not be considered as a feature. We should consider accessibility, developing, and testing as a step in our development and the daily development process. The same as we do with UX review, the same as we do with testing, the same as we do with specification. It needs to be part of our development process, because it cannot be a post process or something that took time. It really doesn't take some time. Including an ARIA label to a button that is not consistent, the text with the action that is going to be performed takes you 20 seconds. Including an alt property to an image, it takes you 20 seconds. So don't leave it for the end, because later never happens. So please consider this when you are developing a website. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian, for your time. It was a super interesting talk for me, at least, even when I'm not a developer. but I find it really useful. We have a couple of questions. The first one, will you put this into continuous integration of a project, or do you prefer to run it manually?
I normally now do it manually, but I'm planning to include it into the CI/CD. So I want to run those tests once the pull request is created. So whenever it is deployed to these dynamic test environments that we have, to avoid even releasing to a test environment accessibility, so code with accessibility issues. So it will be very, very nice to put it in a CI/CD to avoid this. But for now, I'm doing it locally.
Okay, we have another one. What's your opinion about having QA people running and pushing for accessibility accomplishment?
Sorry, say again. Having QA people?
Yeah, run requesting accessibility accomplishment, the QA team.
I mean, the thing is, accessibility is not a responsibility of the developers. Accessibility should be a responsibility of the whole team. So not only my QA team should be testing this. We do paired testing normally between developers, but as well UX, PMs should have this in mind when they specify. So if we tackle accessibility from the beginning, we will have less testing to do because we will do the correct things. But I think it's very beneficial that everyone tests this.
Okay, I will tell the last one because it's very important. Would you convince your boss team to include accessibility, even when it's not what you say before?
The thing is, because I got this question almost every talk, like, how do I convince my boss to include this? The fact is, you don't need to convince your boss to create clean code, right? So it's given. You are the tech expert. You are the developer. So it's up to you to say, look, sorry, I don't want to commit this code because it's not clean. I don't want to commit this code because it has a UX and visual bugs. So you are the one as well to say, look, I don't want to commit this because it has accessibility issues. So I'm waiting for you to give me a sentence to put in an alt image or whatever. So again, it doesn't take time. We need to take this out of our minds when a boss tells you, oh, but accessibility is going to take you double the time. So deadlines, I want to get this in production. If you do it in your daily development process, it doesn't take time. Another issue is when you inherit a project and nothing was done for accessibility. Now you need to fight with your boss to say, hey, I would love to invest some time to refactor something. But yeah,